Aloha, good afternoon, and to all of you Irish out there, happy St. Patrick's Day. Welcome to ThinkTech and another broadcast of Living Legend Lawyers, the Hawaii State Bar Association's project to memorialize the careers of our three-digit members. Today's show is about Native Hawaiian judges, and I am extremely pleased to have with me Kamehameha graduates and retired Circuit Court judges Melvin Soong, bar number 616, and Wendell Huddy, 683. I want to have you tell me a little bit about your background so that the audience can hear a little bit about you. So Judge Soong, would you go first?
Okay. Born and raised in Kauai, born the year 1934, so kind of experienced World War II, and all that went on with barbed wires on the beaches, and myself carrying a gas mask to school, first grade or second grade. The gas mask was almost as large as I was. But born and raised in Kapaa, went to Kapaa High School, entered Kamehameha at the 8th grade, so I think it was 1947 to 1948, and stayed the remaining years and graduated in the class of 1952. Big event for the class of 1952 is we won the ILH championship by beating Roosevelt 6-0. But yeah, after high school, I went to Denver. Three of us went on some football scholarships, and then transferred to San Jose State, where I transferred after Denver dropped football, so we lost a year in transferring, but played and stayed at San Jose State because San Jose State had a police school, which I wanted to, attend and graduate from. So, yeah, I got out in 1957, and then went into the military, served 3.5 years. I was infantry airborne. And, the background that we had at Kamehameha with the RTC, and, we were a military institute, dress blues for graduation, song contests, and other important events. So, I stayed in and came back after active duty, tried out for the Kauai Police Department because I graduated from San Jose with a police degree, but just didn't want to stay there. And so I applied to law school. That time I just missed out on the Korean War benefits. I did not make that. So wife and I went back, 2 kids, and put myself through law school by ourselves. And then came back here to Hawaii and served in various Attorney General's office, Deputy Director of Taxation, private practice, U.S. Attorney's Office, and then judgeship with District Court and Circuit Court. I also stayed in the military and stayed for 30 years. So now I'm a retired judge, Circuit Court judge, and a retired Army Colonel with the U.S. Army Reserve. So that's basically what I've done, and of course have enjoyed 15 years of retirement thus far from the bench.
Well, I'm very envious of the fact that you've had that many years of retirement. I'm looking forward to that myself. Judge Huddy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
I was born in Honolulu, but before I was 1, I was sent to Kauai and raised on Kauai. I actually was raised by my uncle, and who later adopted me when I was 12. The family name, biological name originally was Ako, and when at 12 years old, I was adopted by Huddy, my uncle, Abraham. I went to Kapaa Elementary, very significant. I was very lucky and very fortunate. All of my teachers at Kapaa Elementary were excellent. Even, I recall Mrs. Barnes, Susan Barnes, who was my kindergarten. And the reason I mention all of them is that they motivated me throughout. Then, after the 6th grade, I entered Kamehameha at age 12, the 7th grade. Graduated from Kamehameha in 1959. I was a student body president at Kamehameha, as well as served as class president. After graduation at Kamehameha, I went on to the University of Minnesota. That was a significant experience for me. And the reason was I had two careers in mind at that time. One was accounting, and the other was law. Those two professions went back to my childhood. Abraham was with the then Mutual Telephone Company, and he was a junior civil engineer. He was very key in forming the union. It was, at that time, IBEW 1260, so the Hawaiian. At a young age, I followed him around, and we had meetings, I met some of the people, like there was Blackie Fujikawa, whose son Tommy Fujikawa. They took over IBEW 1186. There were other union people, but the significance was that it motivated me in two areas. One, and I also met an accountant. So accounting and law, I'd say. I graduated from University of Minnesota in 1962. 1963, I entered George Washington University of Law School. Again, I was fortunate. I had excellent professors. One of the professors, everybody probably knows, is Jeff Albert. He eventually ended up here at the prosecuting attorney's office. He was one of my law school professors, a business course, I think. And I graduated from George Washington University in February of 1966 and returned here. I was with the prosecuting attorney's office, then went into private practice and ended up with the district judge subsequently, and then a circuit judge later.
Okay. You know, we've had a number of these programs to date, and we've listened to a lot of fascinating stories about how people ended up in Hawaii. But, you know, I wanted to ask you a question because the two of you were in Hawaii and then you went away to go to law school, you know, and it just seems to me that back in the late 50s and early 60s, law wasn't exactly the number one choice for people like ourselves who grew up here for your education. So Judge Soong, why did you choose to go to law school?
Well, you know, I grew up in the plantation and pineapple days. And if you were not with the elite of those groups, I mean, you were just, everybody was the common folk. And everybody was poor. Poor not in the sense that, you know, money-wise, because, you know, it was hard to build homes. People had just small homes, but there was always food for everybody to eat, and everybody shared. You'd go to the ocean and so forth. So I don't mean it that way, that you were poor that way, but, you know, everybody just worked hard, you know. The main jobs were the plantation, of course, and the pineapple canneries, but that was really summer work. And a lot of people that worked regular jobs took summertime off to earn extra pay, you know, and that's how it was. But everybody shared. My dad was worked in the tax department, so, and he was the civil service director for the county on Kauai. But since he had a background in the tax department, all the old folks used to come at Christmas time and he'd prepare all their taxes, you know, and everybody would bring food and all of that. So we had a great variety of food about tax time. But I mean, that was something that was always there in the community. You know, everybody was not rich, but everybody pulled together. And, you know, there was no homelessness back then. If somebody, you know, lost their parents or someone got sick, you come and stay with Auntie. And you stay till everything is okay. So, you know, the idea of homelessness and so forth never came about. In fact, you know, we had cousins and a couple uncles that came and stayed. Some after the war didn't have a place to stay. Yeah, you stayed with us till they got settled. So, you know, it was a time back then that everybody pulled for themselves. Of course, we did not have any law schools here, and so you went back. You know, I had wanted to be a policeman, but you know, because of some physical injuries, I didn't pass the Honolulu Police Department. I went home to Kauai, and of course, got into the Kauai Police Department. But after a year, really, before a year was done, I decided it wasn't what I wanted to do, and you know, the law had been bugging me for a while because of all the injustices I had seen and so forth. And I said, well, hey, let's go try the law and see what happens. Now, you know, I didn't have anybody to look forward as far as an example because there were no judges there that I knew that were Hawaiian or even local. We had some magistrates and so forth, but they had not gone to law school. They had just been appointed. And so, yeah, so it's a little different, but going off, you know, my wife and I, we did it ourselves. I had a 1957 Chevy Camaro Sport Coupe that I loved very dearly, but I had to sell in order to make it to law school, and I almost didn't make it to law school. I didn't want to sell it, but we did, and you know, give my wife a lot of credit. We had a child already when I was in the service, and so another one on the way. So I went back to law school with a wife and 2 kids, and no GI Bill or any means of support, except Kamehameha did award me 1 year the Poindexter Award, which was $200 and so forth. So that helped. But stayed at student housing, which were old, dilapidated World War II buildings, but everybody in the Santa Clara Village, all the students were the same way. So we persevered and, you know, got a degree, came home, took the bar, and started off from there. So.
And what about you, Judge Huddy? It looks like you went away to college and then you just stayed up there until you got your law degree, but why did you decide to go into law?
I didn't just stay there. After I graduated, I returned here. But I already mentioned that from my upbringing, I was exposed to both law as well as accounting. My first choice was accounting. I was at the University of Minnesota. The first year, we had a counselor, and I was in the business. I think I came out with all B's. Okay. And my counselor was talking with me, and he said, "You're doing very well." And he said one of the university professors had indicated that I came up with something novel for accounting, and they were looking at it, and they were trying to decide whether or not they were going to adopt it in the professional field.
Well, before you finish that story, Judge, we're going to go into a break right now, so we'll be right back.
Okay.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we try to get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starley from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes, there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy because, as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from ThinkTech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
And welcome back. We're on the air again, and Judge Huddy was just telling us a story about how he was considering accounting or law. So, Judge,
That's right. And after the first year, I decided I did not like accounting. I told the counselor I didn't want to be a bean counter for the rest of my life. And thank you very much, but I was going to switch majors. And I went into, I had spoken with someone already, and the person suggested that I get a liberal arts education as opposed to specializing. And that's what I did. After I graduated from the University of Minnesota, I did return here. And I met a lawyer by the name of Ambrose Rosehill. And we talked about law school. Amby was a graduate of Georgetown. I was admitted into George Washington, so I went to George Washington. That's how I ended up in law school with that background.
Okay. And then, you know, I noticed something fascinating about both of your bar numbers. You know, even though you graduated and then Judge Soong passed the bar in '63, and then Judge Huddy, you were 3 years later. There's only 67 digits separating the two of you.
Yeah, I don't know how many, I think we had 18 or 19.
So not too many people took the bar back then, right?
And you knew everybody back then, you know.
Okay, but I'm thinking if only maybe 15, 18, 20 people took the bar every year, there must not have been that many legal jobs around. So how difficult was it to get a job back then?
Yeah, well, I started off right the next month. I think it was in September we took the bar. In October, I was with the Attorney General's office. Mr. Kobayashi hired me, and great boss. Learned a lot from him.
And what about you, Judge Huddy?
It was difficult, except for me, I had mentoring. And I already mentioned Ambrose Rosehill was one. He suggested that I, while studying for the bar exam, I clerked at the prosecuting attorney's office. And the prosecutor at the time was Johnny Peters. The first deputy was Mac Hamada. And they accepted me as a clerkship, in a clerkship. And as a clerk, I was given some time to study for the bar exam, and with the understanding that if I passed the bar exam, I would become a deputy prosecutor. So that was, that got me the experience. I entered the prosecuting attorney's office, I believe, in March of 1966, around there. I passed the bar in November. I became a deputy. I forgot to mention one thing. I already was a commissioned Army officer, and we all know this. I got called up in 1967. The Vietnam War was going on, and I was just a bunch of group, a group in a control group in St. Louis, and we all got called up, and I was assigned to, so I left the prosecuting attorney's office. I went into Vietnam. I was there for a year, from '67 to '68. I was a captain. I commanded someone asked me, do you want to give a 5-year commitment and go into Judge Advocate Corps office, and you may avoid Vietnam? I chose Vietnam. I wanted to get back here and practice, and I didn't want 5 years in the military. So I just went there. I commanded a unit that was called the Armed Forces Courier Service for the entire country, and we were support services for the combat troops. And then I got back here at Shafter, and from Shafter, I was already putting some feelers out, and I was told I have a position at Rosehill and Titcomb. That's the other one that came in, Fred Titcomb, Judge Titcomb. And that's how I got into it. So I didn't have, I had mentors that were guiding me, and the most difficult part was waiting for the acceptance, because there are feelers outside too.
And what was the practice like, back in the late '60s? You had gone from what? Criminal practice now into civil practice. So what kind of cases were you having?
Yeah, your word was good back then, and well, you knew the lawyers and so forth. So if they said, I'll use 60 days in which to reply, that was gold. I mean, you didn't have to bother, or, nobody did anything different. I mean, your word was good back then. Of course, less attorneys and so forth, but it was a good time. There's, quite a bit of involvement in sports and play together. So there's good outside meeting of the judges and in district court, Judge Russell Kono attempted to get the military in. And because I was serving as a JAG officer for Headquarters 9th Corps and had communications with the Schofield JAG, he said, well, go contact the Schofield and the rest of the other JAGs so that we get the military attorneys and the local attorneys and the judges and so forth to come together for something like a golf tournament, which we celebrate the 43 years next year, and of course the Hawaii Bar is taking over. So, I mean, that was a great boon and help for our court system, and especially district court. We had a command sergeant major come down and sit right in court and, notice who's coming to court, and if the person was not there, find out. Maybe he got called on an emergency meeting, so rather than issue a bench warrant and so forth, we handled it administratively, and so it cut down the work really well. So I mean, that was a great boon for that. Another thing we did in district court was try to get the translators registered and knowledgeable, not only in the language, but also, in their discussions with the witnesses, because they'd be up on the witness would be there and the interpreter would be listening to the guy talk for about 5 minutes, and he asked the interpreter, okay, what did the guy say? He said, no. He said, no, it's much more than that went on. But, part of it, interpreting is very hard because the language is not the same, the different meanings, and the legal terminology to get involved. I mean, so we did get a program started, and we had it so that we had translators that were trained, and I think it's still going on district court. I left district court, but at least the program started, and I think they got just about everybody trained in all the languages and so forth that needed to. Like Chinese, they just got to be 30, 40 languages. We had one case where one person said, she spoke a particular language that nobody could find, some Manchurian, whatever, and so forth. They finally got one and found out that she really knew another language but wasn't letting on and insisted, that this particular language. But of course, her case got delayed. She kind of delayed her own self. But I mean, that's some of the things that go through. And Judge Kono and myself, when I was there, wanted to make sure that people in district court, the People's Court, really got a fair hearing, and especially that those that did not speak English. So that we thought was a great advantage in to getting that particular ability for translators to actually know the law and make sure they translate exactly what the person is saying and not what they're interpreting and all of that. But again, in a different language, that's pretty hard. So we got to give credit to the translators also.
And Judge Huddy, what was it like practicing, when you got back from Vietnam?
I was a novice, and right off, I was told, you're here to learn, observe, and do everything and anything. It was primarily a plaintiff's lawyer's firm. That's Rosehill and Titcomb. Fred was the personal injury lawyer. Amby backed him up, and I was number 3, which meant if it was a divorce, you handle it. If it was criminal, you handle it. Okay? But I enjoyed it, the experience. The judges were terrific, I'd say. Whatever court we appeared, they were very helpful. Judge Fukushima educated us. The lawyers, I think at that time we were a little more civil than later. because it was a small bar. Okay, I thought it was a big bar, but my peers or my mentors were telling me, you don't know what a small bar is. When they were admitted, there were 300 lawyers, all right? When I was admitted, we had 500. We're what, over 6,000 now?
We're over 10,000.
10,000, okay. So anyway, but the lawyers had to get along. One of the things that they would tell me, the hardest part is getting a client. The second hardest part is servicing that client. The third hardest part is getting that client to pay you. Okay. Okay. Get as much as you can up front, but you're not going to get very much. Okay. But take it because it's an experience. But still, you know, we learned, now, I don't know if you want me to go on. I had a very limited practice. You know, I was just learning, and then eventually I moved on to what was then known as Shim and Siegel, and that became relevant for me because my childhood was forever involved in the labor union. My mom didn't like unions. You know? My dad was a union organizer, okay. And Shim Siegel had a reputation of being a labor union firm, and I went there, and that's when I got a little more limited. I got exposure to, well, Ray Tam eventually joined. He was basically the personal injury practitioner for that firm. That was after I left. He went in, but I was handling along with I think it was another attorney, Ono, I think at the time, Andy Ono. We would handle whatever personal injury practice we had. Things that we couldn't handle, we would feed off to Wilson and Titcomb, and Fred Titcomb would handle. But most of it was labor practice. I had the painters union. I assisted. At that time, the leader was John Montrone. They used to refer to him as a professor. Yeah. And then IBEW 1186. That was my contact was Tommy Fujikawa, Blackie Fujikawa's son, and they gave me the experience in labor. I don't know if you want me to go on, because shortly thereafter, I became a judge.
Right, well, and you know, we wanted to talk to you today because both of you are retired judges. So why don't we just go right into that? Judge, you were appointed to the district court bench, what, in 1973? And when you know, why did you want to become a judge?
That's a good question. I was asked that question by the then governor, John Burns. Okay. I got to meet him one time. Alvin called me in one day, and Bill Richardson was the Chief Justice. All right. Alvin asked me, he says, how would you like to become a judge? Think about it, okay? This is a career maker. You either stay in private practice or you go and you make a commitment. And I asked him why. You know, why me? Okay. There aren't very many Native Hawaiian judges. There weren't very many Native Hawaiian attorneys. You've been observed. You have an opportunity to make a decision. And that's how I decided, career-wise, I saw what was facing me in private practice. It's a grind, you know. Okay, there's no comparison to me between state, federal work versus private practice, or even the county, the grind that's involved. In private practice, you're doing the two ends, the business as well as the profession. As a judge, or as a public practitioner.
You know, Judge, I think your mic is a little bit low. You know what? We're going to go to a break right now while we fix that. So we're going to take a break right now, and then we'll be right back.
Oh, okay.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance, Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. You know, Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon. And on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
And welcome back. You know, we're hearing Judge Huddy now tell us how he became a judge. I'm going to let him finish, and then I'm going to ask Judge Soong why he wanted to become a judge.
In any event, I had this discussion, and then I was told, Alvin suggested I meet with Chief Justice Richardson, and I had an appointment with him. Question was asked, why do you want to become a judge? And I mentioned to him that I thought about it and understand that Native Hawaiians were having a hard time, not only in the profession, but also in the community. At that time, the Native Hawaiians had the highest crime rate of any ethnic group. And I had, back with my dad, Abraham, he was instrumental in getting the Hawaiian homes for Anahola on Kauai, and I was involved in that too, okay? Through my childhood experiences, even at Kapa'a, all right, there was a grading system. I was fortunate. I was the only Native Hawaiian in what was rated the A class, all right? The other Hawaiians, who were my friends, were at the bottom. They were rated, they were put in the D class, okay? So that influenced me as to which direction I was going. The only thing Chief Justice Richardson told me is that you got to meet the governor. So I went to meet Governor Burns, and he asked me, why do you want to be a judge? And I mentioned to him, I said, I've made a career decision, and it's going to be a commitment. And I mentioned to him that if you're looking for Native Hawaiians, I'm it. And I was. Now, let me point out one thing. There is another person who was very helpful, another mentor, and his name through the union is David Trask, okay? And David was very instrumental in my career on the political side. Now, this is what David told me. We're distant cousins.
Okay.
He said, once you get on the bench, you put the politics aside and you call them as you see them. To become a judge, you're going to find out whether it's a federal judge, a state judge, or if you're being a judge on the mainland, politics is involved. But once you get on the bench, you leave the politics aside and you decide it in accordance with what the evidence is and what the law is, and that was it. And that's how I ended up at the district court, and Chief Justice Richardson appointed me in 1973.
Okay, and Judge Soong, you were appointed to the district court bench in 1981.
81. And C.J. Richardson came down and talked to me personally about taking his brother's place, Robert, at that time. And he said he wanted a Native Hawaiian judge, to be on the bench. And, my time, there's nobody else. So, it's a great honor, and, just to be considered. And I said, yeah, CJ, I'd really be honored to go sit on the bench. I'll try my best and so forth, But, getting on the bench, though, once you get there, as Judge Huddy said, you try and conduct a fair trial. That was foremost in my mind, and I'm sure all the other judges' mind. It's a fair trial to everybody. No care what race or, background you come from. A fair trial is what you are entitled to, and that's what you're going to get. Now, sometimes in district court, though, people come without attorneys and so forth. Yeah, you got more leeway in which to try and balance things out. People who don't understand the law, they don't have attorneys and all of that, so you can do that. But, in circuit court, where most of the time they're represented by attorneys, then, of course, you got to stand back and let the attorneys handle it and so forth. But, yeah, when Judge C.J. Richardson asked me, I was honored, and again, at my time, nobody else that I could think of, Judge Fernandez, also from Kauai, went to Stanford and stayed in California, and I know he had gone, I didn't know he'd become a judge, but I knew he had gone up and studied law at Stanford, but as I said, other than that, so it was a great honor and a privilege to be asked by the CJ, and we all tried our best in trying to be fair. Yeah, Hawaiian causes, you feel a lot towards what was going on, and especially if you knew what had happened before and some of the trials and tribulations and shortcomings for the Hawaiians, but at the same time, again, once it became to the court, you had to call it as fairly as you saw it and be fair to everybody.
So once you put that judicial robe on, did you ever feel that your Hawaiian ancestry became an issue as far as any case or any issue that you were facing?
Not really, we went to Kamehameha. At my time, out of the 119 boys there, and we were the largest class back then, I think we had 26 in college prep. Everybody else was in the workshops, and that was the thrust of the education, industrious men and women. So really, going to college and all of that, just a few of us went on and all of that. So, the thrust was not that part of the education, but for a lot of us that saw some of the injustices, not too much when we were growing up. The Renaissance came a little bit later, but we saw the injustices as we were growing up, and as I mentioned, that's part of what I wanted to get into law. But as I said, once you got into it, though, even though you may feel certain things, again, you got to be fair to all parties that come about, and that's the way I conducted what I thought and handled the trials that way, and I'm sure Judge Huddy did the same thing. You got to call it like it is. And, especially in the circuit courts where they have their attorneys and so forth, their attorneys are charged with that responsibility and they get paid for it. So you let them handle it how they see fit.
Well, now, you guys have both told me that your judicial philosophy is to basically call it as you see it. But did there ever come a time where you were handling a case and maybe the litigants or maybe the parties tried to make Hawaiian ancestry an issue, and you found that maybe you had to address that, maybe it conflicted you? Did you ever have an opportunity like that during the time that you were on the bench?
Well, I played ball with a lot of the guys that used to come through the gambling cases and all of that, and I had to recuse myself. I know these guys. In this district court at that time, you know, the judges had to pass right in a corridor in front of all the defendants and all that. Guys are, hey, Mel, and so on. So I'd have to recuse myself from sitting on those cases. But I mean, you know, everybody knew that if you were a judge, you were going to call it. You might say hello and so forth, but I don't think anybody, you know, thought that they were going to get a break. They knew us and all of that, but I mean, the guys that were gambling, yeah, we gamble, and that's part of it, you know, and for us too. I mean, gambling, you know, coming in, guys gambling on the golf course that never get charged or anything like that, you know. Sometimes there's need for some balance and so forth, but everybody understand it was against the law to gamble, so whatever the fine was and so forth, they would pay, or, you know, an appropriate sentence would be dealt with.
Well, you know, Judge Huddy, I know you handled the criminal docket for a long time, and you mentioned earlier that when you first became a judge that Hawaiians were populating the courts in great numbers. Did you ever have to face that issue? You know, Hawaiian defendants coming before you, and you now have to decide what you're going to do about that.
I had Hawaiian defendants, many of them. I did not feel it was an issue, all right? Although sometimes, not the attorneys, the clients would try to make it an issue. One of the cases I handled, and I'm not going to mention names, okay? This was at the circuit court level. This involved organized crime, okay? And the people involved were Native Hawaiians, and they were from Nanakuli, Waianae, that area, all right? I was married at the time, okay? And one of the defendants was very well known in the community here in Honolulu, okay? He was a Roosevelt High School graduate, anyway. But he was coming up for disposition. The phone rang, I'm sleeping. My then wife answers the phone. And this person says to her, and she gets me up, she says, he wants to talk with Brada. You know, I said, so I take the phone, and it is. It's got to come out right. This is what the message is being given to me, okay? Of course, the incident was reported after the phone call. And I told him, just lay off, okay? You're calling the wrong person, you know? And that was it. It was an indication that they were using my ethnicity, okay, to try to get me, to try to influence me in what the disposition was going to be. And that was the only, but it didn't come, I don't even know if the lawyers were really aware, you know, what had transpired. The report was made anyway. That was the incident. On the civil side, no. Now, district court, I've always looked upon district court as a people's court. And there was this defendant who was a vagrant, and he was part Hawaiian. And this was his MO, okay? He does something to get arrested so he can appear before a judge, plead guilty without a lawyer, and the judge would give him 30 days so that he could eat and clean up.
One bit.
Right?
You know, Judge, I want to thank both of you. You know, we're running out of time here.
Okay.
You've been very gracious. You gave us a lot of interesting anecdotal information. You know, I want to just say one thing. Judge Soong has been a great supporter of Law Day Golf. We've served on a committee together, but you know, I have to take my hat off because Judge Huddy was the grand champion back in 1973. And with that, I'm hoping everyone will come out and play Law Day Golf with us on May 1st this year and tune into the next episode of Living Legal Legends. Thank you.